in their Republic of New African Citizenship. So we're going to talk about what it means. Considering themselves, quote, an African nation in the Western Hemisphere struggling for complete independence, the New Africans challenged the legitimacy of black people's forced incorporation into the United States. Cooperation into the United States. The objections formed the basis of the provincial government Republic of New Africans programs for liberation and inanimate the decision to frame their, I don't know, hold on a second, I need to do something here real quick. Let me do one thing. Let me look up this word real quick, make sure I'm saying it correctly. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? There it is. Inanimated. The decision to frame their actions using rhetoric benefiting a government rather than an activist organization or a political party. Developments in the international law also help guide their course of action in demanding liberation as a self-proclaimed government. The PG, which is Provincial Government, Republic of New Africa, expected the United Nations to provide its people with certain protections guaranteed in the documents like the UN Charter, the UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights, yet created a provincial government, and the demands that African Americans had the right to choose rather to remain as U.S. citizens did not minimize the nation building from many troubles. New Africans had to negotiate being Republic New African citizens while inhabiting and beginning legally bound by the United States of America. Although there were some limitations imposed on them, choosing to become a citizens of the Republic of New Africa also empowered activists to rethink the relationship with the United States and other oppressed peoples of the world. The new Republic of New Africa and black citizenship in the United States. Okay, no worries. Making sure, looking back. All right, cool. New Africans predicated their contest to liberate a land base in the South on the idea that African descended people in the United States were historically not willing U.S. citizens. Their reading of economist Robert S. Browning work led them to insist that the legacy of white supremacy troubled black people's citizenship in the United States. First enslaved Africans were prisoners of welfare that resulted in their forced and brutal transport. Sorry, everybody, there's something on my thing. Transport to the Western Hemisphere, where they were descendants labored as chattel, with no rights to the protections and privileges that accompanied political belonging. Second, the ratification of the 14th Amendment unfolded emancipating Africans into the U.S. body politic without their consent. In the provincial government, Republic of New Africans' own words, quote, "We are all born citizens of the black nation. This is the only legal citizenship we have. We are not legally citizens of the United States because we were never given the chance to vote yes or no on American citizenship when it was offered to us after we became free. Third, even if U.S. membership, quote, offered, end quote, to them, African Americans never never have employed the full benefits of their association with the U.S. nation state. Instead, violence and terrorism have characterized their experiences, and the United States has refused to adequately protect them, or at least fully extend the means of legal redress that is supposedly guaranteed to U.S. citizens. Although independence activists attempted to resolve the problem, African Americans continued to experience, after the destruction of some legal barriers to, quote, first-class citizenship, end quote, the new African approach to those dilemmas contained its own set of limitations in the production of the self-determined citizenship. New Africans could not completely ignore the benefits, responsibilities, and laws of the U.S. society as, quote, captives and within the United States. They operated with the Boysen-like duality of being consciously New African while simultaneously de facto, if not legal, U.S. citizens. Let's look back just in case. Yep. Hey, welcome back. The New Africans were not the first group of people to struggle over the theory of praxis of citizenship. National belonging has long been a contested concept in the United States, especially for Africans and their descendants. When European settlers first arrived, they began waging war against and displacing indigenous habitants. They brought with them the notion that people whose status was less than royalty were subject to the will of those in power. By the time they rebelled against England, the founders of the incipient American nation state had significantly rethought previous notions of citizenship and objectivities. The French Revolution helped them to develop their thinking of this in this regard as substantiating among Anglo-Americans the notion of republican citizenship, a form of national membership based on responsible participation in the daily functions of the state by every eligible person. It is important to note that the prevailing ideas about who belonged in the pool of ineligible person who's flexible and applied unevenly so that it served the best interests of individual new states, the federal body, and the propertied white men who occupied most, if not all, the new positions of power. Because of this malleable, let me make sure I'm saying that word right. Hold on, everybody. Give me a second. Oh, wait, who's in the comments? Miriam. Okay. All right, everybody, hold on a second. Let me look up this word.
السلام عليكم عمو. هاي بارك الله بيك يا عمو. السلام عليكم.
Alaikum salam, Miriam. Malleable, and selective bestowal of U.S. citizenship. Several collectivities posed immediate threats to those white men exclusive conceptualizations of national belonging. First, though they expected white women to help build their nation, they claimed that white women were entitled to limited citizenship that would become available gradually. Next, Anglo male citizens mainly considered Native Americans a neutral part of the quote-unquote frontier environment and therefore beyond consideration for both citizenship and humane treatment. various political leaders challenged and complicated this simple conception, demanding that Native groups receive more nuanced attention. The third group of concern was enslaved Africans, whose very existence posed a serious contradictions to the foundation of the newly created American state. In regulating enslaved Africans to perpetual servitude and claiming human chattel as a legal property of their owners, white male citizens cast them as beyond consideration for the citizenship and legal, legislative, and judicial discourse and practices. The fourth group, legally free black men, presented the most complication to the practice of U.S. citizenship, especially since many of these men participated on equal footing with white men in the carnage of that won independence for the 13 colonies. Some legally free black men possessed the lawful ability to meet the requirements of citizenship during the post-independence and antebellum eras. They were biologically male, owned property, and practiced responsible public and private duties for the individual state. In northern courts, case after case affirmed nominally free black men's citizenship and legal rights, but those supposed entitlements often went unenforced. Southern courts continually ruled legally free black men as, quote, subjects, quote, quasi-citizens, or at least de-citizens, so I guess not citizens, quote, wards, and, quote, third class. In both the North and the South, this class of black men occupied positions of legal ambiguity and social liminality. I know it. Liminality. As discussed, as decisions of black men's status proliferated at all levels, at all levels of the even involving local states and national politics. The combination of the era, radical, and gender conventions facilitated a near erasure of black women as subjects in, quote, or perhaps objects of social and legal debates respecting U.S. citizenship. The Dred Scott decision of 1857 seemed to clarify once and for all black people's political status when it determined that those of African ancestry were not protected by the U.S. Constitution and could not be full members of the nation. While they could be residents and the citizens of individual states, which determined their status and well-being as non-citizens of the Union, black people ultimately had no rights that white men were bound to respect. In the aftermath of Dred Scott, black folks who before were skeptical of migration began packing their bags and looking for homes in liberal in Liberia, Canada, and elsewhere. Even Frederick Douglass, for a short time, gave, quote, qualified support to black people's migration to Haiti. Interesting. The Civil War and Reconstruction soon revitalized black men's pursuit of U.S. citizenships rights and spawned national debates concerning membership of the body politic. The question of citizenship seemed to be settled with some enslaved Africans. Legal emancipation began in 1862 and the ratification of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. The 13th Amendment abolished involuntary slavery except as punishment for a crime. The 14th Amendment provided provisions for people to become U.S. citizens and its promised citizens equal protection under the law. And the 15th Amendment protected male citizens' right to vote. Yet African Americans still would not enjoy the rights and privileges according to citizens of the United States. Instead, they entered a NADIR, I think that's NADIR, NADIR, during which racial terrorism, black codes, and discriminatory laws violently infringed on the rights of those aforementioned pieces of legislation supposedly guaranteed to citizens. The irrevocation of black constitutional rights follow Reconstruction clarifies the meaning of, quote, paper citizens. Oh, we want the page? I'm sorry. Hold on. My bad. 79. My bad. My bad. Oops. My bad. I'll give it a second. All right. Sorry, I'm looking down on the page and it's like I look up on occasion, so I will miss. No matter what, I will miss. So I'm trying to look up more, but I can't. I get so into it. As articulated by the Republic of New African theorists in the New Republican Africans Declaration of Independence, the term recognized how people of African descent have formed the constitutive outside, end quote, of normalized American citizenship. White citizens in all parts of the expanding U.S. territory associated black African people with an enslaved moral decrepitude and intellectual debility. Historian Gerald Horne demonstrates that they were, over time, constructed as criminals, traitors, and enemies, especially as the 13 colonies emerged as a new nation state. These ideas carried over into what legal scholars, Guy Rory Binder terms, quote, the slavery of emancipation. In Binder's analysis, the long-standing ideas about African peoples and their descendants were made anew following the Civil War and were written into the 13th Amendment. We all know the 13th Amendment allows slavery, and we all know that this white settler colonial nation overly incarcerates non-white people, especially black people. The New Africans complicated the 14th Amendment and its impact. They revealed this complex historical relationship. Therefore, the term, quote, paper citizens enlarges the arbitrary nature of black belonging. Being constructed as commodities for the American market disallowed newly made black Americans from taking advantages of an opportunity to decide on the stand firm in their self-determinated status as citizens. Simultaneously, this historical positioning permitted white Americans to define black African peoples in opposition to their own true citizen status. Of course. In doing so, white Americans policed the boundaries of citizens and commodity with brutal violence, unmerciful economic reprisal, and innovations in psychological terror. Promoted by violent provocations, the unfulfilled promises of freedom, and the desire to self-govern, African Americans attempted to gain and exercise their rights through a variety of actions. One tendency pursued the creation of black states and homesteads in places such as Texas and Mound Bayou, Mississippi, and in Kansas, Oklahoma, and Illinois. The tendency persists and evolved during the 20th century through the national movement for establishment of the 49th state a Chicago-based effort that advocated for the U.S. state to be set aside for African Americans. Yeah, wait, what? Oscar Brown Sr. and Bindley C. Cyrus claimed that doing so would provide their people with the only significant means from becoming industrious, self-reliant, and self-sustaining. History has proven to them that white Americans would prevent African Americans from achieving their full potential when they were forced to live together under white political leadership. The Revolutionary Action Movement and African Nationalist Independence Movement, authorized by Owasi Jamen Adefunami, I'm sorry everybody, and Queen Mother Audley Moore, maintained the idea even as the new African independence movement was beginning to cohere. Alongside these endorsements of territorial nationalism, black activists' various efforts to win reparations, and after the funding of the United Nations, the movement to charge the U.S. government with genocide of African people in North America, all challenged the assumption that the arena of civil rights could yield equality to all human beings. Another black movement traditions that wrestle with the concept of citizenship, though from a different perspective, include, I got someone in the comment, I don't know who that person is, we're doing a reading, include various extortions aimed at obtaining and securing full civil rights for African Americans. Exertions, The visionary of the participants in such endeavors often frame the struggle in terms of gaining, quote, first-class citizens, end quote. That rhetoric assumed that one of the major problems African Americans face was exclusion from access to the rights and privileges guaranteed by the U.S. Constitution. Civil rights activists achieved their legal goal by 1965 when the Civil Rights and Voting Rights Acts criminalized to some degree discrimination of public accommodation and preventing eligible adults from exercising their right to vote. I may disagree with voting, but this is pertinent, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's the black belt. They that's where the black belt is. This is where the black belt is. So, yeah. Based on these and other historical lessons and examples of black political agency, who's crying? I thought someone was crying. No. Political agencies, the Obadella brothers, Queen Mary Moore, and other Republic of New African theorists argue that African Americans had needed to exercise the right to choose where they wanted to be place their constant of citizenship. According to the Republic of New African Declaration of Independence, they could be citizens of the Republic of New Africa, but by the time New Africans began advocating this position in the 1960s, they learned how to utilize international law and recent legal precedents within the United States to argue their case. For example, they cited the UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 15, which states, quote, 1, everyone has the right to a nationality, and 2, no one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his nationality or denied the rights to change his or her nationality. Black people in the United States were indeed deprived of their original means of self and community identification. After several decades of enduring life in what became the United States of America, they forged new identities. For these reasons, the provincial government claimed African descendants in the United States, having since constituted a colonized, quote, nation within a nation. The Republic of New Africa. The Republic of New Africa, the Republic of New Africa could enact its right to independence under United Nations Resolution 1514, and I think that's 15, which guarantees a people's right to self-determination and protects them from unwarranted, quote, armed action or repressive measures of all kinds, in order to enable them to exercise peaceful and freely their rights to complete independence, end quote. Then Brother Amira moves the RNA headquarters to Mississippi. He believed that he was acting on this internationally guaranteed right in earnest, as they made gestures towards political independence. New Africans were more consumed with building membership and bringing their president in exile, Robert F. Williams, home. Those activities earned the Republic of New Africa plenty of government surveillance and routine attempts to discredit them and prevent them from gaining a large following. New Africans' resulting difficulties demonstrate the realities of being paper citizens. Rather, Gandhi's, I think, dispute with a Michigan judge is exemplary. An article published in the Detroit News on May 1st, 1969, underscored what its author perceived as a contradiction between the Michigan lawyer's rhetoric and his tendency to make, quote, full use of the rights, privileges, and amenities of the system he detests, end quote, including, quote, the privilege of practicing law in a Michigan court, end quote, and, quote, practicing the constitutional right of free speech by declaring, as he so often had before, that he is not a citizen of the United States. Considering Oberdel's inconsistent, District Judge James Smelt reasoned that since the New African, quote, was not a citizen, how could he hold membership in State Bar of Michigan? Smelt stopped the lawyer during his defense of a client, quote, and barred him from practicing in Smelt's court, end quote. Oberdel responded to the judge's condemnation by asking, quote, how could a judge say I am not a citizen when the law of the land says I am, despite what I might think, end quote. Smelt admitted to the Detroit News that he knew Brother Gandhi would not be prevented from practicing law in Michigan. The judge just wanted to make a point that the New African lawyer's rhetoric was problematic because it seems to run counter to his actual practice. Certainly, the judge was also wanted to flex his muscles in that situation to let Brother Gandhi know who was boss. Look down real quick. Cool. United States, the U.S. state and federal agents demonstrated their power with deadlier effects in response to the New African citizen attempt to match their bold rhetoric of nation building with corresponding actions. Just 1 year after the provincial government's founding, the presence of the New African Army, the Black Legion, caused alarm among authorities and residents in Detroit and resulted in the New Bethel incident. That's that shootout. A similar violent reaction occurred when Amir Oberdel moved the RNA headquarters south with the presumed, quote, propensity for violence, a reputation associated with New Africans purportedly because of the New Bethel incident. The tone of the Republic of New African work posed a novel kind of threat to the United States, local, state, and federal governments. In Mississippi, only about 30 New Africans regularly worked with the Jackson headquarters, and Brother Amir tried to, quote, make it perfectly clear to local officials that they were coming in peace, end quote. Yet because New Africans attempt to match their practice with the language of, quote, revolution and nation building, they challenge U.S. government bodies' ability to exercise sovereignty over the new Republic of Africa. For that reason, local officials and the FBI continue their efforts to monitor and disrupt New African activity. Those efforts culminated in the August 18th, 1971 raids on New African headquarters and residence, incursions that challenged New Africans' ability to exercise self-determination, unbind themselves from the United States. New Africans' entanglement in the shootout brought even them charges, quote, ranging from murder and levy of war against the state of Mississippi to possession of stolen property. Jurors found 3 New African activists guilty of murder, and Brother Amir was convicted of conspiracy to commit offense of assault and of unlawfully possessing unregistered firearms, end quote. Those convictions stand to this day in the pre-trial attempt to protect the, quote, New African, the Republic of New Africa -11. The 11 men and women who survived the 2 raids, defense lawyers, unsuccessfully filled, quote, an Article 3 challenge to the U.S. jurisdiction over African people in North America. This motion argued that the Republic of New Africa is a nation separate from those held captive by the United States of America, end quote, making a clear connection between Republic of New Africa and people such as Martin Delaney. The Republic of New African 11 and their lawyers attempted to articulate before a hostile audience a theory that had long been marginalized by the U.S. government and African Americans who never fully subscribed to the idea that they were members of a captive nation. The raid on the Republic of New African headquarters, the charges brought against the Republic of New African 11, and the fact that the state government indicted and convicted New Africans as U.S. citizens all magnified a duality New Africans faced in their simultaneous positions as Republic of New African citizens and captives under U.S. sovereignty. For New Africans, these happenings also signaled an outright refusal of the U.S. government to consider the legality or the morality of African American citizenship. Finally, the charges and convictions demonstrate a fundamental problem with New Africans' project to construct their own citizenship. As a selectively imposed, though adherently defended concept, citizenship only matters as much as the forces in power dictate it. Therefore, conscious New Africans, quote, dual citizenship, demonstrated an imbalanced personal and group application of such ideals, as well as the uneven persecution they faced because of their reconceptualization of national belonging. That's cool. Such complications were visible when considered the New Africans who associated with the Black Liberation Army, BLA. The BLA was an underground amalgamation of several autonomous military cells, some of which pledged allegiance to the Republic of New Africa. Some of them faced violent repression that imposed the limit of their expressed Republic of New African citizenship in the U.S. courts. New African citizens, Shaifa, Asia, Bakura, joined the BLA after local and federal authorities forced her underground because of her activities as a Black Panther in New York City. In 1975, police apprehended her and convicted her of felony murder following a shootout in Virginia, and resulted in the death of her comrade Kambozua. Bakura and her confidant Masia as a Hosa claimed that because they were New Africans, the Commonwealth of Virginia had no jurisdiction over them. Brother Amir agreed, stating, quote, Sister Saifia and Brother Masia have lawfully chosen their citizenship of birth in the Republic of New Africa as that to which they owe their exclusive allegiance, end quote. That choice, the Republic of New African leader argued, should be protected by the Emancipation Proclamation of the 13th Amendment and Article 15 of the UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights, quote, to which the United States is signatory. I think it's signatory, yeah. End quote. Therefore, Brother Amirs insisted the defendants could legally demand their release because they were prisoners of war and not common criminals. But like the RNA 11, Sister Saifa and Brother Masaya, stop doing this. Masia, quote, were charged under civilian criminal statutes of the Commonwealth of Virginia, and despite their refusal to participate, were tried and sentenced to 40 years in prison each. Brother Gandhi's dispute with Judge Smelt and the trials of the RNA 11, Bakura and Masia were only a few examples of the formidable conflicts associated with New African status as theoretical RNA citizens, but physically inhabitants of the United States and legal subjects of the U.S. government's authority. Even though New Africans attempted to create an independent nation based on their reading of history and legal theory as a captive nation, they were unable to exercise their beliefs as fully as they desire. This inability stems from the United States and other nations' outright refusal to back the Republic of New Africa and recognize it as a legitimate nation. Such refusals have affected the ways that activists have been able implement New African political science in their personal lives. All right, let me look back. The issues are more suppressing. Yeah, we know. What? Yeah, what? Okay. Praxis and being a New African in the United States is the next section, not the next chapter. Okay, I know, I understand what the Congo's going through and like free Congo, but we're particularly talking about New Africans in the United States, and they're wanting their own sovereignty and nation. So different country. Let's see if this is a... I am not taking guests. I am doing a reading. Praxis in being New African and in the United States. Since its conception, the provincial New African government has struggled to protect New Africans' rights to choose their citizenship, even as Brother Amir, Saifa Bulkura, and many others attempted to give legitimacy to their self-determinated formulation of citizenship. New Africans overall practice mirrored what Brother Amira prescribed in his solicitation of support for, quote, people's revolt against poverty. He instructed that, quote, black people live in two worlds politically. We must vote in the United States election, and we must support our black mayors and congresspersons and other officials in the U.S. system. This is a matter of self-defense. We must vote for and support the officials of our black nation. The Republic of New Africa also. Both things are necessary at the present time. Nevertheless, the provincial government, Republic of New Africa, took steps soon after its founding to demonstrate to the world that the Republic of New Africa was worthy of sovereignty and independence. One step involved the creation of Black/New African Legion, or the New African Security Forces. Most, if not all, conscious citizens were required to serve in the army at some point. Okay. Why are we talking? We get the Congo. Yeah. Wait. Hopefully, what helps? Bukanra. Maybe Bukaran. I don't know. I tried. Hold on a second. Let me read this. No. Government found under the serious necessity for a strong military. Okay. In fact, several paramilitary organizations represent a large number of participants in the conventions for the signatories of the RNA Declaration of Independence. The provincial government, Republic of New Africa, also later developed rules stating that no citizen, declaring declaring Declaration of Independence. Are also later developing rules stated that no conscious citizen should ever serve in the United States Armed Forces. However, previous service did not cause suspicion. Brother Gandhi served as a fighter pilot in World War II in the U.S. Army hired Brother Amir as a contracted employee until 1968, and U.S. Armed Forces veterans filled the RNA's ranks. Point number 10 of the New African Creed illustrated the Republic of New African's instance on fostering among its citizens a willingness to sacrifice. In reciting it, New African claims, quote, I will give my life if that is necessary. I will give my time, my mind, my strength, and my wealth because this is necessary, end quote. Okay, New Africans expected their comrades to give these aspects of their lives in order to achieve the Republic's sovereignty and, quote, a better condition than the world has yet known. Serves in the New African Legion created just one opportunity for New Africans to demonstrate their devotion. The service of General Kurat Tabisha Ali, Rashid aptly exemplifies how some new Africans demonstrated their commitment to Black nation through participation in the Legion. Rashid involved himself with the Black Government Convention and was the 99th signer of the RNA Declaration of Independence. From that moment, he served as various soldierly position under the Minister of Defense, John Taylor Mashui Chu, and another military leader, Algeo Abagabolia. General Rashid emphasized the importance of leaders like Chu, who were able to install discipline in legionnaires. As he reveals, quote, John Chu told us two things about weapons. He said pew-pews are made to unalive people. He said, leave your damn pew-pew at home. If you got a knife, a stabby stab, and you get so mad you pull it out, if there's nobody to cut, you cut yourself. He don't want you to come back with a knife that you done pulled out of the holster and ain't no blood on it. That's pretty much how he controlled us, with that weapon thing. General Rashid's testimony indicates that the legionnaires had to be ready to give their lives and, if necessary, take lives of others for revolution. However, that dictation could not be based in reckless bellicosity that would give the U.S. government justification to further repress the new African independence movement. New Africans had to maintain discipline and discernment with regards to their use of military force. Therefore, crude suggestions likely made legionnaires think carefully about the potential power and danger that came with wielding weapons for the movement. Just looking back. Even though some new Africans emphasized the potential for combat, the Republic of New Africa was never just a military apparatus, despite what the FBI, police might have stated. The Legion constituted one aspect of the provisional government. The provisional government, Republic of New Africa, also established several consulates that served as local governing bodies. The chief officers in each cities, or the consul, was elected by local New Africans and approved by the RNA president. The consul spoke for the provisional government, coordinated Republic of New African programming, and ran local New African Republic of New African activity, including members' recruitment, nation building, classes, and tax collection. In fact, before a person could become a New African citizen, the RNA required that she or he go through nation building classes. Brother Bokuba Trace describes nation building classes as sessions that, quote, explain the relationship between land and power, how the land basically produced all the resources that New Africans need to be in control of to survive as a people. He insisted until, quote, he could get control of the land, then we could always be dependent on outside sources or our power. According to Sister Aneb, oh my gosh, Kongagosistile, Kogositile. That one's hard. They also taught attendees who they were as African people. The government administration handbook contained more details what likely took place during nation building sessions. First class facilitators gave prospective citizens, and orientation in which they learned about provincial government and the founding documents. Next, potential New Africans learned the history of white atrocities against black people in the modern era, end quote, as narrated by texts like W.E.B. Du Bois, The World in Africa, Hubert Apotheker's A Documented History of Black People, they use the N-word, People of the United States, and Ralph Ginsberg, 100 Years of Lynching. Taking together such texts provided potential citizens with the historical and theoretical grounding in the circumstances African people faced in the United States and the world. The use of primary documents as seen in Apotheker's and Ginsberg's edited volumes indicate that new African leaders likely wanted recruits to learn to think critically about history by engaging directly with voices of the oppressors and oppressed. Considering the documents included in those texts, it's conceivable that instructors highlighted their ancestors' multiple attempts to gain the rights of citizenship, but to no avail. Instead, they saw kidnappings and enslavements, harsh black codes and slave laws, brutal and spectacular lynchings, sexual assaults, and more. Such institutionalized victoriousness reinforced Anglo-Americans' attitude towards the prospect of black citizenship and inclusion. Further, Du Bois' research indicates that although the specific conditions of African Americans may have been distinct, they were not significantly different from what African people throughout the world faced under European and American domination. Although nation-building classes were critical of white supremacy, the actions of the European people, the use of scholars such as Apotheker and Ginsberg, both Jewish, may have allowed participants to focus their major critiques on the system of oppression. Consequently, they would have placed the actions and ideologies of specific individuals and groups within these broader contexts. The Apothekers and Ginsbergs may have reminded them that some people of European descent may usefully and enduring allies. In doing so, they created space for participants to develop their own analyses about the historical trajectory of black people leading up to 1968 Black Government Convention. After becoming oriented to the need for new African liberation, inspiring citizens delve deeper into Republican New African doctrine and philosophy. They study and discuss Amir Obadele's book, Revolution and Nation Building, and War in America, and Malcolm X's messaging to the grassroots. Students also read texts dealing specifically with emergence of modern nation, including white racist nations, Algeria, Ghana, Guinea, Tanzania, and Congo, Kinshasa, Australia, Cyprus, Israel, Rhodesia, Union of South Africa, Canada, India, China, and Cuba. Matching such a comprehensive study of contemporary nationalism, which guided investigation of African people's condition in the United States, preparing students to think critically about U.S. citizenship and determine their collective destiny. Finally, instructors taught would-be citizens about how to define New Africa. The Republic of New African Constitution provided that all African descendant peoples in the United States, quote, are deemed to be citizens of Republic of New Africa unless and until their actions are explicit statements indicating otherwise. Because most African descended peoples of the United States did not, either by choice or through ignorance about the Republic of New Africa, self-identified as New Africans. Conscious citizens had to find a way to distinguish New African independence advocates from the black masses. Conscious New Africans, or, quote, citizens of record, went, quote, through the government centers or consulates, nation building and orientation courses. The Government Administration Handbook delineates a list of behaviors and actions to aid further in these identification process and provide Republic of New African citizens with guidelines for their daily practice. The section titled, quote, a clear understanding of what all citizens must do, and, quote, a clear understanding of what the individual must do, lists 9 responsibilities that include paying taxes, studying RNA literature and current world events, selling and distributing Republic of New Africa newspaper, and being, quote, a missionary who carries out, quote, the basic simple RNA message to all black people with whom one comes in contact. The documents stipulates that a missionary, quote, must set an example in living up to the New African creed and in industrialistness, perseverance, consistent and revolutionary fervor, which the missionaries may then rightly expect from other citizens. In some nation building classes provided an opportunity for potential New Africans to educate themselves about the range of historical, legal, and sociological topics, and to think critically about their status in the United States. Although New Africans belonging was based primarily on being African descent, it at times expanded to include non-African people, as the case of Japanese descendant Yuri Kachiyami illustrates. New African citizenship should also be understood as a revolutionary identity that sought to include a broad array of oppressed people of color. Citizen Yuri became a citizen record in 1969. Prior then, she was known in activist circles due to her relationship to Malcolm X. She cradled his head after assassins unalived him, along with her activism in Harlem, her participation in Organization for Afro-American Unity Liberation School, and her family's widely popular open houses. An adherent supporter of the Republic of New Africa almost from the moment they declared independence. She agreed with the nation's conceptualization of citizenship as well as its goals to create an independent nation. She took the oath of citizenship shortly after the right was extended to non-Africans, and she died never renouncing her pledge to the Republic. Sister Yuri identification as a New African and other New Africans' acceptance to her helps to illuminate how the flexibility of the, quote, captive black nation conceptions of RNA citizenship accommodate other oppressed groups and individual non-black activists committed to liberation. If Sister Yuri's RNA citizenship stands as an exception, then Brother Amir Abidel embodied the acquisitional New African. He served the Provisional Government, New Republic of New Africa, first as a minister of information and then as a regional vice president before assuming the presidency in 1970. Brother Amir used his various positions during the 1960s and 1970s to pursue Republic of New African's independence full time. He became a, quote, New African prisoner of war following the August 18, 1971 shootout in Jackson, Mississippi, and due to the nature of the appeals process, he was incarcerated at different times from then until 1981. Within various penitentiaries, Brother Amir modeled intellectual curiosities and academic rigor, studying international law, U.S. and world history, and current events, even as he maintained communications with New Africans, the RNA's allies, and U.S. government officials. He dedicated his time and energy to building an independent black nation and to freeing the RNA 11 and many other black Latinos / I don't know why there's an O there, and Native American radicals imprisoned for their political activities. During the intermittent period when he was not in prison, Brother Amir traveled across the country, raising funds for the RNA 11 and other RNA projects that he worked hard to maintain. One of those projects involved the creation of municipal council, the models that the provincial government Republic of New Africa borrowed from Native Americans, including the Dene. New Africans responded that by developing the council, they could qualify for the demand, quote, millions of dollars in revenue, shared funds, and the community development funds. Yeah, I don't know what that means. I've never seen it that way. Let me go check on my dog real quick. Hold on. Ow, my knees. Just get in there. Alexa, turn up dining room light. Get in there. Get in. Oh no. You're here. All right, hold on. Get up there. Up. Okay, thank you. Where was I at? Okay. Chokwe Lumumba ESQ was another exemplary New African. He became a conscious New African citizen in 1969 while still a student at Kalamazoo College in Michigan. I almost said Africa, my bad. During his first years of service to the Republic of New Africa, Lumumba functioned as one of the 3 judges whom Brother Amir credited with preventing the provisional government from falling into shambles during the first constitutional crisis. He also served as Minister of Justice and in 1970 constituents elected him vice president of the provincial government Republic of New Africa, a position he held until 1984 when he became the chairperson of a newly created New African People's Organization. From the moment he committed himself to the Republic of New Africa until his death of 2014, Brother Chokwe dedicated his legal expertise to serving the national New African independence movement. He helped with the RNA 11 legal case, defended Mutulu Shakur, Fuluna Sanu Ali, and Bilali Sunni Ali in the infamous Brinks expropriation case, and served as legal counsel for others. Lumumba, I think it's Lumumba. No, it's not. Oh, it's Lumumba. Later confound the Malcolm X grassroots movements, was elected to the Jackson City Council in 2009 and served as mayor of the city briefly before passing in February 2014. Lumumba maintained that he ran for political office at the behest of his organization and not for his own political aspiration. Despite his expressed reluctancy to serve as councilperson and then mayor, his election to those posts fit squarely with the long-term strategy developed by Brother Amir and others during the provisional government's formation. Oh my gosh, here we go. Kachayami, Obadeli, and Lumumba would have been considered model citizens because they dedicated their lives and careers to new African political science. But as one may imagine, they and other new Africans found it difficult to function purely as citizens of the Republic of New Africa because they remained captives in the United States. That perceived captivity, like the imposition of citizenship, provoked a range of reaction from new Africans. For example, in May 1975, Brother Amir wrote, quote, "The United States government has continued to hold me under a illegal parole, restricting my travel, speech, and associations, and treating me with imprisonment despite my situation as a popularly elected chief of state, lawfully on the territory claimed by the United States," end quote. Even as he projected himself as the head of state, his legal status as an American citizen hindered his ability to fully exercise his perceived political and legal powers. Sorry. All right. Saku, oh my gosh. Owusu demonstrates how blurred the lines between new Africans and U.S. citizens become in practice. Owusu, Owusu became a cautious citizen of the Republic of New Africa in 1970 and held several local and national positions. He even served as president of the RNA in 2008 to 2011 before becoming a citizen of record. Owusu labored as a draft counselor. In that position, he educated young men about how the U.S. military draft process worked and encouraged them to avoid fighting for the United States in the Vietnam War. In the process, Brother Saku also learned how to protect himself from forced military service. He called before the U.S. Draft Board. Has successfully stayed out of the military by using a student deferment. The conversation, Owusu cited his abstention from U.S. military service as demonstrative of the many choices new Africans must make on a regular basis as dual citizens of the Republic of New Africa and United States. From his vantage point perspective, new Africans already operate with that sense of duality by the time they pledge allegiance to the RNA. Some folks, regardless of citizenship allegiance, found ways to completely, quote, drop off the grid, end quote, and live outside most U.S. legal boundaries and responsibilities. Brother Saku, on the other hand, refrained from taking that freedom from himself, though he was able. He stated, I cannot just disregard everything according to U.S. citizenship. because I cannot just disregard everything according to U.S. citizenship I just read that. Because I have no power to exercise RNA citizenship fully. Further, the provincial government, Republic of New Africa, never acquired the power to offer him complete protection, even as former president and a conscious citizen of the RNA. However, this state of affairs did not profit Awusia, I can't say it, from pushing the boundaries that confined him as a dual RNA U.S. citizen, as concerns at an extractive model for circumventing the restrictions of U.S. citizenship. Brother Saku offered the example of Brother Amir and the delegations of New Africans who he claimed visited Libya several years earlier by traveling across state borders using RNA-issued passports. Another example of testing the boundaries of New African and U.S. citizenship involved a New African from Detroit. At the time of the incident, the citizen was driving one car in a caravan of New Africans traveling through rural Mississippi. Then they all were pulled over at police checkpoints. The New African apparently did not have a state-issued driver's license. Instead, he presented authorities with his RNA-issued one. The black police officer that at the checkpoint could have given him a hard time for failing to produce proper identification. Instead, they chatted briefly with the occupants of the New African cars and their fellow travelers. Then, after a few intense minutes, everyone passed without further interference or reprimand. Brother DB Amimia Nabinia provided a counterpoint to the aforementioned enactments of New African American duality, proclaiming, I am a U.S. citizen, but I am an African. He distinguished between his legal citizenship and his radical identity. Brother D, as he is called, argues that some New African independence rhetoric is empty because of the provincial government and its affiliated organizations have not built institutions that provide enough power to protect its citizens' sovereignty. He considered New Africans, quote, delusional to think they're free based on declaration alone. By his own admission, he uses U.S. license and certificates for legal matters, and when traveling abroad, quote, will quickly play that U.S. citizen card, end quote, if necessary. Even within U.S. borders, he has had to play that card because of the benefits at his disposal. Those benefits include ambulance service in case he needs to be rushed to the hospital in emergency. Quote, where is the New African ambulance? He asked, insisting that before New Africans can talk honestly about independence, they need to take into account all the benefits associated with being, quote, enslaved by the world's richest slave masters. Brother D's contentions highlighted the fact that such societal advantages impact how most conscious New Africans negotiated U.S. society, and they also influence how others viewed New Africans. Some social movements theorists discuss how social movements outsiders construct the identities of movement participants in terms of alter versions. Alter versions are, quote, identity constructions of a movement that develop among those outside of the movement, including movement opponents, movement targets, and would-be movement participants. Local newspapers, the RNA's most vocal enemies, preferred unforgiving altered versions of New African identity with the blessings and encouragement of federal government. The Mississippi Clarion Ledger strategically challenged every possible aspect of New African culture, including the use of chosen names, New Africans, marital status, and self-determinated citizenship. For example, when Hakima Anna stood trial for the murder of the police officers who unalived in August 18th shootout, Clarion Ledger staff writers often refer to him as, quote, Thomas Edward Norman, who prefers his adopted Swahili name of Hakim Anna, end quote. Every time they mention his partner's Tamu Anna, they refer to her as his, quote, common law wife, because though recognized by the RNA, their marriage lacked the legal authorization of the U.S. government. All right, hold on a second. What time is it? I'm on page 92. I'm going to look ahead real quick. All right, I think that we're coming to the next page is going to be, it might be a short read. Well, maybe not, but it's a good time to stop. I'm coming to a good stopping point. On the other hand, some white progressives and leftists offer qualified support to New Africans, attempts to exercise self-determination and respect the idea of New African citizenship. Following the Black Legion shootout in Detroit office during the New Bethel incident, a group of white Detroiters created a Black Legal Defense Fund to provide funds for the defense of citizens of the Republic of New Africa. However, Black Legal Defense Fund members did not expect everyone's interest in helping their cause to recognize and respect New African autonomy. They claim that group membership, quote, does not imply agreement with the political ideas or programs of the defendants. The, malleability and uneven application and or imposition of U.S. citizenship demonstrates at least two basic problems that New Africans have yet to resolve fully. First, the conceptualization and practices of U.S. citizenship are not static, but evolve based on several independent factors, including domestic and international politics, U.S. constitutional amendments, demographic shifts, and changing priorities of the national government. For Africans in the United States, economic factors wave a major cord that tethers them to their ever-changing same status over time. More specifically, their enslavement, the denial of their citizenship rights, and legal and de facto social proscriptions on their full participation and protection under the law have all been immediately entangled with their oppressor's ability to earn a profit. Second, New African Theoretical Foundation exhibits marked limitations due to Republic of New Africans' exclusive focus on African enslaved in the South, illusions of African enslaved in the North, and notable omissions of legally free, though politically liminal, Black men and women in both regions, including this precariously situated, quote, quasi-free group in their analysis would permit them to better theorize a deep-running racism at the root of U.S. citizenship and may prompt New African intellectuals to question the various ways that the very concept of citizenship itself may operate as a tool of oppression. As the citizenship of Yuri Kochiyami demonstrates the Provincial Government Republic of New Africa has already taken practical steps towards refining citizenship in broader terms than their theory and rhetoric suggests. The fact that their creations of a revolutionary, quote, developing world identity has allowed new Africans to empower themselves in important ways, including building solidarity with other oppressed people of color. And then we'll stop there and we'll read New African Identity and Developing World Liberation. So interesting. They're continuing to build and to do better, which is amazing. And it looks like they did some legalization, try to do like legalization, trying to work within the frameworks and stuff, while identifying that they really can't do that. They already are in coalitions with indigenous people. They're already talking with indigenous people. That's the thing that I wish people would go and investigate instead of coming on here and saying that. Like, they're in coalition with them. They're in yeah. So like, you know, the next section is going to be New African Identity and the Developing World Liberation. So it's amazing that they took on other people of color in those things. And the development is still going through. They're still in this set. They're still trying to change up things, and they're still learning from mistakes, and they're learning from contradictions that are happening. So that's cool. Well, the other thing you could do too is find out. There's different sections of this. The section that's prominently working hand in hand with like indigenous communities, and there's another section that is based in idealism and opportunism, which is not good. So where'd it go? Where did it go? What page did I say I was on? Help me, everybody. What page? Where did I go? Okay, I went too far. Where is it at? There it is. Found it. Woo! Almost lost my page. Now, this is a new book for me, so I'm still learning a lot. You know, so I have a lot that I have to. Oh my gosh! Don't do the reading thing. I still have a lot that I have to process a bit for myself. Yeah, add a bookmark. Add a bookmark. How did we do today? Table of contents. Wow, from 76 to 93. Nice. Pretty good. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Everybody say thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Understandable. Understand. Yeah. But also investigate, because they also have a revisionist line that is part of it. You know, one that doesn't. You know, that thinks that, like, you know, it's bad. It's bad. But the other part is that they're in coalition with indigenous people, and there's indigenous people in coalition with them and this program. So, like, it's really good. So that's a good thing. Yeah. All right. Does anybody in there? Hope everybody enjoyed the reading and stuff and learned something new, hopefully.